We've all heard of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Cinematic Universe, Universal Monsters Cinematic Universe. But is it possible that there is actually a ghost cinematic universe, but they're not on film? Is it possible that there is a ghostly alliance that weaves all these stories together? And then we take a look at a bizarre conspiracy theory. Is it possible that the movies, the books, the stories you love the most actually tell you who or what you were in a past life? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. Actually, not having a great day. Let me go ahead and get through this intro. I'm having a crummy day, but that doesn't matter. I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope you guys are having fun doing whatever you're doing, whatever happened today. I hope you did it with a smile. You ran over a bunch of pedestrians, but I was smiling the whole time. I just spent an hour wrestling with my computer, so I need your guys' help. I had to install a bunch of new stuff, new versions of my audio program. It was Dead Rabbit Radio related. If it was just some stupid game, I would have said whatever. Please let me know, because I'm using a whole new settings setup. Please let me know if this episode is too loud or too quiet. Your ears are bleeding. You're like, yes, Jason, it's so loud. But you're doing it with a smile. Your ears are bleeding with a smile. Please shoot me an email or hit me up in the YouTube comments about the volume of this episode, because on my screen it looks like I'm being quiet. I'm all yelling hell loud. You're like, stop, your brain explodes. On my screen the waveform looks smaller than it used to, but everything else tells me that it's I don't know, man. I don't know these audio programs. I've only been using it for 6 years. So let me know if the volume's good. If not, I gotta figure something out. Turn it up, probably. That'd be the easiest thing to do, fix it. But two people who don't need fixing, two people who are perfect just the way they are, walking into Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Everyone get on your feet and give it up for Elaine and Garrison. Woohoo, yeah, yeah, walking on into Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Elaine and Garrison came out to the Oregon Ghost Conference, and we met out there. It's such a fun experience. I really like that Ghost Conference. I can't wait to do more in the future. Because you guys came out there to see me live. Really appreciate it. Elaine and Garrison, you're going to be our captains, our pilots this episode. If you guys can't support the show by showing up to the live events or by supporting the show financially, that's totally fine. Really, really is. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. Let's go ahead and get this party started, though. First off, I'm going to toss Elaine and Garrison little engineer caps, little engineer clothing. I'm like, fix my computer. That's what you're going to do. You're going to fix my computer this episode. No, I'm also going to toss you 2 shovels. Everyone hop on board the Carpenter caboose as Elaine and Garrison start shoveling coal into this engine. We're chugging our way out of Dead Rabbit Radio Command, all the way down to an elementary school. Nice leisurely train ride out to an elementary school. Headed all the way out there. I wanted to say something. Oh, this is great. I wanted to say something about yesterday. Oh, this is what I totally spaced on this. As we're going out to the elementary school, I want to talk about this. So, if you are a member of the Patreon, or if you're thinking about becoming a member of the Patreon, join us for our live episodes. I don't think I promote these enough. They're actually, everyone gets to hear them. I edited them down and turned them into an episode during the week, but yesterday's episode about the solar plexus clown gliders and the black hand and all that stuff, me and one of my Patreon supporters owned the monkeys, or owned the monkey, it might be singular, but anyways, we talked for maybe an extra half hour about that show, doing more research about the solar plexus clown gliders, that photo that I found, or that drawing that I found, we went and started finding out where that came from. We were going through old blogs. Come and join us. That's a lot of fun. Rudy Jazz was there in the beginning. They usually need to go to bed because they live in some other country. They live on the moon, and time is different there. But usually each episode starts off with a good long conversation, just kind of like chit-chatting about how life is, and then we usually talk about something for around a half hour. I can't promise that's going to be interesting or not, but sometimes we're talking about pop culture, sometimes we're talking about YouTube drama, we were talking about stuff like that. And then after the episode, we sat, me and Own the Monkeys, did a bunch of research on the solar plexus clown glider thing, so I really appreciate anyone who comes out for the Patreon live shows. They're at Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's a lot of fun. It really, really is. So if you guys are current Patreon support, because a lot of people support the Patreon who don't come to the yeah, Jason, it's Sunday at 11 in the morning. I got other stuff to do. I don't know, maybe worship God. Like sitting there at church. You're all listening to the episode. But yeah, if you got the time and you're already a Patreon supporter, come and check it out, because it's a lot of fun. We do get to chat pre and post episode. And if you're not a Patreon supporter, you can't, but if you became a Patreon supporter, then you could. So, yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And I thought it was cool. We talked more and more about the solar plexus clown glider thing yesterday. And listen, this is kind of really what I'm getting at, too. I'm not an idiot. We're doing all this stuff about solar plexus clown gliders, about these entities that are latching onto humans and making their lives miserable, sucking energy out of their misery. And I started going, wow, what if there's a conspiracy? Like, what if people actually worship these things? It would make sense if there was a entity that people knew about, that they would worship them. And I did not plan on ending the episode like that. It was just a thought that popped in my head. I talked to Own the Monkeys for a while, probably for about a half hour. We're sending articles back and forth while we're talking. Then I had to go eat lunch. And then I went to bed, took a nap. So I'm a sleepy boy. I'm only 4 years old. I woke up an hour and a half later, and my computer doesn't work. Like, I woke up to record this episode, and nothing's working. And I had to download new drivers and get a new version of the program. And even now, it's not the same setup. I cannot tell if this volume is good or not, because it's when they revamped the program, when they made an update of Audacity, for whatever reason, they changed where all the sliders were, and I can't find the sliders that I need. They hit them. I thought halfway through this, sitting down to record an episode, fumbling with this stupid stuff instead, I go, this is probably what I get for talking about a soul-sucking, misery-loving entity possibly blowing up their spot by saying that there might be a cult dedicated to these things. We've talked about solar plexus clown gliders a lot on this show. If this is your first episode, you're like, what in the world is he talking about? As your ears bleed. I'll put episodes in the show notes. We've talked about them multiple times. I never once put two and two together and go, what if people worship these? And I told Own the Monkeys after the episode, I said, these type of stories make me the most nervous, because what if I'm right? Like, if I start talking about, like, Hollywood worshiping the Illuminati, or being a part of the Illuminati, worshiping demons, no one's going to come after me. Everybody's saying that stuff. If I come up with some weird conspiracy theory about alien life or ghosts or something like that, no one's really going to care. If I accidentally, quote unquote, stumbled across some grand conspiracy, and then the next episode, I'm talking about some guy at Arby's masturbating in the milkshake machine, which is a real episode. I'll put that in the show notes. That's when someone could go, whoa, wait a second. He's actually, like, onto something. Like, he exposed something, we have to shut it down. We have to get rid of this podcast. So when I woke up ready to record this episode and everything wasn't working right, it popped in my head. I'm not saying 100%. An interdimensional entity hopped into my computer. I'm not saying that, but I will say that I did put two and two together. I did go, this is really weird timing. I had never had this problem before. 6 years working on the show. The only other times I've ever had to reinstall this program is when I got a new computer, or reformatted the hard drive to get rid of some stupid virus. I woke up from a nap, my computer didn't work. Specifically, the program I used to record the show. The program I had just used 2 hours earlier to record yesterday's episode. Crazy stuff. So, I guess I'm saying, if you want to be cursed, come to the live show. Come and listen. So right now, the monkeys is all flying around. He's the snakes are devouring him. Sorry, but if you guys want to come out and possibly get cursed, Sundays at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's in the Discord, so that's where we do it at. Let's move on with the episode today. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. We're headed all the way out to a elementary school. We're about to meet a young girl named Samantha. And she's an adult at this point, and we're standing outside this elementary school, and we're like, hey, Samantha, you got a story for us? And she goes, yeah, I got a couple, actually. She goes, I've had a lot of paranormal experiences in my life, but there's really only one that sticks out head and shoulders above the rest. I've had a lot of weird stuff happen, but there's one story that I really can't explain. And then she morphs. We were watching her shrink. And she turns into a second grader. And she walks into the school. That's not the paranormal story. You're like, whoa, real life shapeshifter. No, I guess that's just a flat. I don't know why I introduced her like that. The story takes place when her in second grade. It has nothing to do with shapeshifting. You're like, Jason, the show's blowing my mind. We just met a woman who can turn herself into a second grader. I don't know when that would ever be a useful superpower. But the story starts off like this. Samantha, she's in second grade already. She doesn't morph into a second grader. She's second grade, and one day she's in the elementary school bathroom. That's where she runs into a friend of hers. We'll call her Lucy. These aren't their real names. They start talking in the girls' restroom. They're the only girls in there, and they're just chatting about their day. They start chatting, and that's when they hear a scuffling noise coming from one of the stalls. And they're like, what is that, huh? What? Sounds like someone's in a stall. Right, you idiots? We hear someone in a stall, and that's what it sounds like. Someone's probably in the stall, but they know there's nobody in the stall. They know they're alone. Now, the stall door is ajar, but they know there's nobody in there, and they hear a noise in that stall. So Samantha and Lucy kind of start leaning over to kind of look underneath the stall, which is easier when you're in second grade, I imagine. They're leaning over more. And that's when they see a pair of legs kind of drop down. Like someone was sitting on the toilet and then they relaxed their knees and their feet are next to the toilet like a normal human. Samantha said that we see this pair of legs kind of like drop down. They're wearing black boots. So it's like someone is sitting on the toilet, which is what you would expect in a bathroom. However, even though this is a second grade bathroom and everything's smaller, she said these boots did not touch the ground. So these black boots on these little legs, the feet aren't touching the bathroom floor. So she's thinking, well, maybe this is a kid, like a kindergarten student or even younger. But there was something else going on with these boots, because not only were they tiny, which would make you think, yeah, it's a little kid, like a kindergarten student. Not only were they tiny, they were also misty, as she put it. Not quite, but kind of transparent. Samantha looks at Lucy. Lucy looks at Samantha. They realize what they're seeing is a ghost. And they both run out of the girls' restroom. Paranormal Experience, right? Probably. You got two witnesses. If it was just one person saw this, it could still be paranormal. But a ghost, a bathroom ghost. The ghost of a kid in a bathroom. We just covered one of these stories on Monday's episode. But this one has a twist. You're like, I hope so, Jason. I hope there's more to it than that. You're like, isn't that spooky? You're like, yes, it would be spooky if I ever found myself in a second grade bathroom, but I'm not, so it's not. No, there's actually a huge twist to this story. This was posted online by Samantha. It was underneath the name No Pain 3497. She said, that happened. I had a weird stuff happen to me throughout my whole life. She could file that away with one of the weird things. However, Samantha said years later, I was attending a different school in a different school district. Make friends with this girl. Let's call her Betty. Betty and Samantha are talking about all sorts of random stuff. Conversation turns to the paranormal. And they start talking about weird stuff, and Betty goes, you want to know what's really creepy? This happened to me when I was a little kid. When I was like in elementary school. One day I went to the bathroom, and I heard something in one of the stalls. Now I knew I was totally alone. But I heard something in one of the stalls, and I kind of leaned down to look, see who was in there, because I knew no one was in there. My curiosity was piqued. I'm not a pervert. I just wanted to make sure that there was someone in the bathroom. And I saw a pair of black boots. And these little legs. But it wasn't solid. I could kind of see through the boots. Samantha said that Betty basically told back her own experience point for point. Samantha says it was pretty much the same story that I had experienced. This girl that I never met before from a different school in a different school district, when she was a young kid in elementary school, she saw the same thing in a completely different bathroom. Different school, different district, different neighborhood, everything's different. Observers are different as well. I don't even know if these accounts are true, right? This is something when we talk about the paranormal, even the most lauded paranormal expert could have been lying to us for the past 50 years. We don't know. If this story is true, though, I don't know how we would even come close to placing it. Having a kid die in a bathroom is already probably pretty hard. We've covered a lot of bathroom ghosts on this show, and when I say a lot, maybe 6 over the course of 1,200 plus episodes. And I say that's a lot because I would have thought listen, man, I think bathrooms are super spooky. The amount of time I spend in a bathroom, you would be surprised that I find them spooky. They're very dangerous. It's the one place where a ghost can scare you and you die. Like you're taking a shower or you poop yourself to death. You're all like, the ghost scares you right after you had a bunch of fiber. You're like, ah! You're slowly lifted off the toilet. The stream of poop is that powerful. Probably not poop yourself to death, but imagine if you were in the shower and that's the point when a ghost decided to reach its hand in through the shower curtain and grab your leg, or maybe he doesn't even have to touch you at that point, right? If you just saw a tiny arm coming through the shower curtain, I don't think you'd be like, well, at least it's not touching me. I'm not terrified yet. Or you're taking a shower again, and someone's just standing there, and you can barely see the outline of them outside of the shower curtain. Or, honestly, this might be the most frightening. You're taking a shower, and you look, and you see a silhouette of a man sitting on the toilet. Like, all of those, especially the ones where they're interacting with the guy on the toilet, you're like, oh, that doesn't bug me. At least he's just sitting there having a ghost poop. You're taking a shower, something reaches in to get you, you slip, fall, you hit the side of your head on the bathtub. That might kill you right there. It definitely might knock you unconscious. You plug up, like your shoulder goes right on the drain of the tub. The shower continues to fill up and you drown. Because you're unconscious, you're underwater, and you're like that for like 3 or 4 days. So by the time they do a welfare check, it's you, Stu. It's just like you're all just become part of the water. The water would totally just, like, you turn into soup when you die in a bathtub. It's super disgusting. The ghost is like, it's laughing at you. That's exactly what he wanted. Some you, Stu. Anytime you died in a bathroom, if you're stepping out of the shower and someone grabs your ankle and yanks you and you fall down, you hit your head on the sink, people are going to go, oh, they slipped. They got out of the shower, they slipped. You drown in the bathtub, people are going to be like, oh, they slipped in the bathtub, hit their head, they drowned while taking a shower. Anything like that, 100% could be chalked up to an accident. A ghost could kill you 9 different ways in your bathroom and no one would ever suspect ghost. You're all strangled by a towel, you're all, and people go, well, maybe they slipped and their neck fell into a towel for 3 to 5 minutes and then they choked to death. A ghost can kill you multiple times in a bathroom, wouldn't even look suspicious. It would just look like carelessness or a freak accident. So it's creepy because of that. Ghosts in bathrooms are super dangerous. A ghost in your bedroom, I mean, like, it really can't kill you. Unless it's the grudge, right? Unless it's actually like a vengeance spirit. Something from a movie. Yeah, it can kill you when you're just like walking around your apartment. You're in your living room and you see a little girl scuttle across the hallway, like from one room to the other. You're like, that's okay. I don't need to ever go down that hallway again. All my food's in the fridge. I'll poop in the backyard. But a ghost in the bathroom can kill you. So already that's spooky. Public restrooms, they're not necessarily spooky, but they're not pleasant places to be. But this is something way beyond that. Listen, there's a skeptical answer that I can give right here. It's possible, definitely possible. Samantha and Lucy truly did have this experience. Samantha said, I never met this girl before. I'd never gone to school. It's possible Lucy, at some point, ran across Betty. They started talking about this. And Betty remembered the story and told it as her own. That's what a skeptic would say. But if both these stories are true, we have the same ghost across different locations, but same environment, the bathroom. The closest thing I can even think about this is a long time ago we did an episode about the demon of toilets. This demon who loves human excrement. And I remember in that episode I talked about, if you think about our bathrooms, they do kind of have this, they have a throne. You sit in, it's usually very clean. It's usually, I say. But I mean, think about, like, you go to a restaurant, a fancy restaurant specifically, you go to a fancy restaurant and you're like, table for 2, and you're like, yeah, sure, come on. And you sit down and you go, man, these sure are nice chairs that I'm sitting in. Because the fancy restaurants don't have booths, I've learned. I'm like, booth seat, please. And they're like, okay, you can go to Taco Bell down the street. We do not have booths here. But I'll tell you this. As comfortable as your chair is in that fancy restaurant, I can almost guarantee that the toilet is fancier. Maybe fancier is not the right word. I'll guarantee it's more expensive. I'll guarantee they probably spent more on that toilet than they did on that chair you're sitting in. Probably pretty safe bet. Bathrooms do kind of feel like a twisted version of a holy place, right? Toilets are usually white or really, really nice, clean. And there's water. I'm just reaching for stuff. Like, let me tell you, you're going to say the sink is like holy water. Well, maybe, it's usually in a bowl shape, like the holy water bowl. Not because bowls hold water the best. Other stuff. Mirrors? Right? That's kind of spooky. It's not necessarily religious. It's just spooky. I'm going back and forth. My point being is, we did a story a long time ago about a demon that worships and feeds off human poop. And this is the only thing I can kind of connect it to. These 2 bathrooms having the same ghost, even though they're not. It doesn't make sense. Even in ghost lore, this doesn't make sense. Because generally, you can have multitude of crybaby bridges across the United States, where if you go late at night, You'll hear the sound of a baby crying. But all of them will have a different origin story. This woman was riding an old-timey wagon and the wheel broke and the woman and the baby fell out in the river and they drowned. Or this woman didn't want her baby anymore, so she threw the baby in the river and she drowned. This, that, or the other thing. There's dozens. Dozens upon dozens of these stories. They all have different origins, and I think most of those aren't true. Crybaby Bridges, I think, is just a phenomenon. When it's really late at night, you're in the middle of nowhere, there's a babbling brook because there's a bridge over a running water. I don't actually think I think in most of those cases, there's not actually dead babies underneath the bridge. And I'll say thank God for that, right? I'm fine with those being not true, but I think the legends persist. I think this is something different. I think if it was just a ghost, I think if it was just the story of 2 haunted bathrooms, we cover haunted bathrooms, like I said, we've covered at this point 7 or 8 of them. But the fact that Samantha goes, the story, it wasn't exactly the same, but it was so close to the story that she told, even Samantha goes, I've had a lot of paranormal encounters, I don't know what to make of this. How can you have the same ghost in 2 different locations? And I don't know what to make of it either. We do have stories about, like, John Quincy Adams. He did something with the Constitution way back in the day, or was he a president? I think he was a president. But anyways, John Quincy Adams also loved to sail around Chesapeake Bay when he wasn't presiding over stuff. And then he'd go to the White House and he'd sign some documents and go, get out of here, losers. I'm going to go sail some more. And when he died, they would see his ghost at his family home, wherever that was. Or you'd see him on the beach. He'd be looking out of the sea like he wants to go on one last boat trip. We've come across ghost stories like that. But these are places where the ghost is not, that's not an actual ghost story, but there are stories like that. I just don't know them off the top of my head. Abraham Lincoln is probably a better one, right? Good old Abe Lincoln. He haunts the White House, but then there's apparently also sightings of him at home. And you would connect the two. You'd be like, well, you know, he's a busy man. He's a busy ghost. Sometimes he wants to be at the White House. Sometimes he wants to be at home. So the two places are connected. Now, if you had Abraham Lincoln at the White House, and then you went to a In-N-Out Burger restaurant, and you went to the restroom, and you saw this big stovepipe hat poking over the top of the stall door, you're like, huh, what? And then you see, like, just blood all over the floor. I mean, that would be enough. It's not like, yeah, you're done at that point. You're like, I'm out. But you decide to be a little more curious, and you go, sir, is everything okay? Is everything okay? And you hear a 4 and you're like, what? Huh? What's going on? I better not run away. I better stay here and get closer to this pool of blood underneath the stall door. That would be the most alarming thing ever. You walk into a bathroom, there's blood all over the floor, and it's coming out of a stall. You lean down. You got to lean really far down. Your hair's actually getting bloody. You're so close to the ground. And that's when you see Abe Lincoln's ghost with his brains slowly rolling out of his bullet wound, blood leaking everywhere. And he looks down at you and he goes, I cannot tell a lie. I did chop that cherry tree. And you're like, wait, was that George Washington who did that? And then he vanishes. The blood doesn't. Your face is in the blood. You're looking down. He vanishes. That would be bizarre. Because as far as we know, I mean, you know, history is told by the victors. But as far as we know, Abraham Lincoln never went to an In-N-Out Burger. I don't even think they existed. I don't even think burgers existed. That would be alarming. Because he has nothing to do. Abraham Lincoln has nothing to do with toilets. He has stuff to do with the White House. His ghost train, that's the other thing that people have seen regularly. They'll see the train that carried his dead body. A phantom train. So he's a busy man. He's got a couple places to haunt. And not one of them is an In-N-Out Burger. So you see what I mean? Like, it was just weird. So did a little girl die in this bathroom? Did she die in 2 bathrooms? Or is it something even more bizarre? Are bathrooms connected by some sort of spiritual portal that these ghosts can travel through at their own convenience? So I'd like to see if we can find more of these toilet stories. You're like, Jason, no, stop telling the toilet stories. Is there a ghost-connected universe where these ghosts can appear in each other's hauntings, just like the Marvel superheroes? You're like getting possessed by a demon, and then Annabelle walks into the room. She's like, my turn. They're like, no. They all team up on you. Slimer shows up. He's like, I'm not real, but, they're going to be a good time here. As you're peeking your brains out, demon has taken control of your soul. Elaine and Garrison. Let's go ahead. Do I have time for the next story? I think I do. Elaine and Garrison, let's go ahead and toss you the keys of the world famous Carpenter. This is a weird one. Let's toss you the keys of the world famous Carpenter copter we are leaving behind this elementary school. Fly us all the way out to Russia. We are headed all the way out to Russia. Specifically, we're headed out to Rostov-on-Don, Russia. It's October 5th, 1996. In Rostov-on-Don, Russia, there's a tenement house. Well, back then, I don't think it exists anymore. Probably got destroyed by a tank or at some point got torn down when communism failed. But Avio Montornea Street, if you're familiar with the area, tenement house number 26. We're about to meet this young man named Igor V. Kolomatyets. It's about 3-4 in the morning, so he's deep asleep when all of a sudden he wakes up. But he's paralyzed. He can't move any of his muscles. So you go, this is a sleep paralysis story. Does a sleep demon show up? Well, it depends on what your definition of demon is, because Igor's about to have a very bizarre encounter, a close encounter of the disturbed kind, you might say, or might not. He's about to have an alien encounter that has bizarre ramifications for all of us. Igor wakes up, he's paralyzed, and he's like, no, I can't move my fingers, I can't move my toes, I can't move my legs, I can't wiggle my nose. And he didn't actually say that, but it would be cool if he did, if you ever become paralyzed. Hope that's the first thing you'd say. Igor is paralyzed, and he starts to float away. So at this point, here's the thing, if you woke up and you couldn't move your body, that'd be terrifying. For all you knew, you had some massive stroke in your sleep, or you slept on your neck wrong and broke a vertebrae. But once you started floating around, it'd probably calm you down a bit. You're like, oh, I'm not paralyzed for the rest of my life. I'm just being abducted by aliens. He starts floating. He floats out of his bedroom window. It's opened. He smashed through the glass. He's all, his face is all scarred up. He's like, I can't even touch my face in horror. I'm paralyzed. He floats through his open bedroom window, and he floats up into the sky towards a UFO, which he described as he's floating towards it. He's like, oh, I better get a good look at this thing since I'm probably going to tell people about this story. He said as he's floating towards this thing, he goes, it didn't look like a traditional flying saucer. He said it was more oblong than that. It wasn't a perfect circle. He also said that it was matte black with what he could only describe as hieroglyphic type writing or images on the side of on the exterior of this UFO. He ends up floating into the UFO, and next thing you know is he's laying on an operating table. That's alarming. And he sees these aliens walking around him. And while they may sound like a traditional gray alien, he said they're around 5 feet tall, with thin arms and legs, frail-looking bodies, large, dark, slanted eyes, very typical of a gray alien. These ones were beige. The beige alien. He also said they had noses, which gray aliens tend not to. They had these beak-shaped noses, thin mouths, and each of them had a little tuft of hair on their heads, like a little bristle sticking up out the top. He also said, this is interesting because we do see this with gray alien sightings, when he was looking at their eyes, the large black slanted eyes, he got the impression that it's possibly not their biological eyes. This is some sort of protective gear. We've covered episodes about that before. evolutionarily speaking, it wouldn't make sense to have eyes that big. You'd have to grow up in a really, really low light environment for it to be reasonable under any stretch of the imagination. UFOs tend to be pretty well lit. They're well lit enough for a human to look around. Every so often we'll come across the dark room in a UFO, but to have a eye, one of your most sensitive organs, to be 2/3 the size of your face, it wouldn't really make sense. We've covered stories before. We have that one about that abductee who reached up in panic and grabbed onto this alien's face and actually peeled back that black eye, and it turned out to be like a visor. They said underneath it you could see a different eye, a smaller eye, like how our astronauts wear big astronaut helmets with that giant visor. People would mistake that as, they just had one giant eye, a giant silver eyeball that was reflective. No, their head is underneath that. We've heard that story before. I'll put that episode in the show notes. Igor said the aliens were speaking telepathically and he could hear them, but they weren't talking to him. It was almost like he was intercepting what they were saying to each other. He realized very quickly that these were very aggressive aliens. This was not going to be a fun visitation. They had work to do and they were going to get it done no matter what. He figured they were hostile. His suspicions were confirmed when they began to run a series of very painful experiments on him. And one of those experiments included scanning his brain. There was a screen in this area of this UFO. As they're running this scan of his brain, he starts to see images from his past. Sees him walk into the grocery store to buy some ham, and the clerk's like, "Sorry, Igor, no ham." And he's like, "Oh, man." He remembers that day he was riding a bicycle home from school. Mama, I got an A+ on a test. Whee! He remembers that time when he was sitting there on the couch watching a television show with his papa. He remembers, he didn't specifically say all that stuff, he just said, "I remembered scenes from my past. I saw stuff that happened to me when I was a kid." They're scanning his brain and they're learning everything about him. And then one of the great aliens one of the beige aliens who's running this experiment is shocked. He gasps. And he turns to Igor and says, "In a past life," because we went that far back, we actually now are going through your past lives. We know everything you did this lifetime, this incarnation. But now we can actually go into your past lives, Igor. And looking at these readings, if this stuff is correct, in a past life, you were not human. You were a member of a extraterrestrial civilization that was based in the Orion constellation, and not just any race, the alien says as he's looking at these readouts. He goes, "No, not. There was a barbaric race that founded an empire a long, long, long time ago. And as empires do, they expand, and they conquer, and they control. And this empire met us. They are brutal. They are warlords. But even worse than that, they were slavers in a society with technology that allowed them to move through the galaxy. They still used slaves. And they tried to enslave us. They were slavers. They were trying to enslave my species. And a great war was fought. And we won. We defeated them. We didn't destroy them outright. But they ended their crusade to capture all of my people and turn them into chattel. That's who you were in a past life. Our cosmic enemy. Igor blacks out, and the next thing he knows, he's in bed at home. He could not remember anything else about what happened that night. You go, Jason, just the crazy dream of a Russian man. And no more, you say. What? Maybe, right? Or this really did happen, and these beige aliens were telling the truth. This device that allowed them to see into his past allowed him to even go further back than when Igor was alive. What's interesting, so I found this story on thinkaboutitdocs.com. They got it from Anton A. Anfilov, who is a well-known UFOologist in Russia. And Igor is also a UFO researcher in Russia, which I think is probably something you'd get into, right? If you were kind of like, I don't know if aliens exist. I'm sure somewhere in the universe they do. You get abducted by one and then dropped back off, you'd probably want to know more about what happened. You'd probably be a little less blasé about the whole thing. You may not be running around telling everyone about your experience, but I think that would definitely kickstart a love of, or maybe a fear of, the UFO phenomenon. Now, what's interesting about this is, let's break it down like this. If reincarnation is real, I love the idea of reincarnation. I don't necessarily know if it's real, but I love the idea because I love reality. The idea of dying and going to a new dimension, paradise, heaven, that actually is more frightening to me than being reincarnated as a butterfly on Earth, because I understand how Earth works. I also, if I was a butterfly, I wouldn't want to have Jason's brain as a butterfly, because then the whole time I'd be complaining. I'd be like flying around, and I'd be like trying to watch Deep Space Nine, and I'm like flying into people's houses, and they're like, what? Oh, look at that beautiful butterfly. They changed the channel. I was like, no, it's Big Bang Theory. I'm like, I'm looking for one of those bug zappers. I'm like, let me reincarnate. They capture me in a jar, put me right next to the television set. I'm losing my mind. Bazinga, 24 hours a day on TBS. I like the idea of reincarnation. I don't know if it's real. I don't know how to classify those stories about people, especially kids who have knowledge of things they shouldn't have knowledge of. They remember a particular battle, or they have weird, almost proof of reincarnation type of knowledge of things. I love stories like that. Because I love the idea of reincarnation. I just don't know if it's real. But if reincarnation is real, it would make sense. Because I would think most reincarnation, I know like there is versions of reincarnation where you can reincarnate as a tree, where you can reincarnate as a gopher, all sorts of stuff. But if you were reincarnating just as truly sentient creatures with a soul, and we have a galaxy, a universe really, but let's keep it local, a galaxy of alien life that have been around longer than it took time for the Earth to cool. We could possibly have civilizations out there that were around when our planet had no water. A flying dirt ball floating in what would become the solar system. You could have entire civilizations rise and fall in that period of time because they formed far sooner than we did. Like they're literally, their planet cooled and it had the right resources and the right situations were created where life could evolve on these planets. It would make sense. There's 8 billion people on the planet. There could be trillions of life, bigger than that, but let's just say trillions of life forms in the galaxy itself that are sentient species. It would make sense, just statistically speaking, that the chances of you reincarnating as a human would be low. you most likely, if reincarnation is real, reincarnate as another alien on another planet. And you imagine if these civilizations rose and fell and were wiped out either by some sort of cosmic accident or war, famine, disease, those souls would be looking for places to reincarnate. So statistically speaking, it wouldn't be surprising if a lot of humans used to be aliens in past lives. Let's put on our conspiracy cap for this one. I should have said that earlier. And then I thought, okay, so Igor used to be an alien in a past life a long, long, long time ago. And what's interesting is the aliens in 1996 were still holding that against him. They may have had a whole bunch more experiments planned. They may have wanted them as part of a interbreeding program, or who knows? This could have been the first of many abductions where they were going to test him and test his DNA, and test his pain threshold, and then eventually try to create an alien-human hybrid with him. It's funny because these guys actually might have already been hybrids. The fact that they were a different color and they had noses, which is something that we don't see in typical gray aliens. These may have already been part of a hybrid program. But when they discovered that he was from an ancient enemy, they kicked him out of the ship. Which is interesting to think that the aliens would hold that against him. I mean, he did try to enslave their entire race, but Igor didn't. Just a past incarnation of Igor. But they're like, whatever, dude, we're not going to have any of our kids have part of your DNA. So they're holding the past against him. But, you know, I go, if you got abducted by aliens, you definitely would want to kind of become part of the alien phenomenon. You'd want to research this stuff. What if it's more than that? I was thinking about this. Let's really expand this out. There are people who love sci-fi books and movies, and they just love that whole world. It may be a particular show, like Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and they're really into it. It could just be the whole idea of sci-fi in general. I'm one of those guys. Like, sometimes I'll just hear, like, a lead of a sci-fi story, right? Like, I'll read the back of a book, science fiction book, and I go, wow, that sounds like an interesting story. I won't read it. I won't read it because I don't have time to read the book, but it'll kind of blow my mind. I'm like, wow, fascinating. I put the book away. Where's that Garfield? Where's that collection of Garfield comics? Oh, I hate Mondays too. But I just love the whole idea of sci-fi. And sometimes people can just tell me what a movie's about, the premise of a movie, and I'm like, dude, that sounds awesome. Some people are all about fantasy. I don't like fantasy. Never saw any of the Harry Potter movies, never read none of the books. I'm not a huge fan of magic. I'll play Magic the Gathering. I'll play D&D every so once in a while. It's been years. Because people don't like playing D&D with me. That's a whole other story. I'm all dressed up as an orc, smashing their table. But I don't really like fantasy stuff. It's never appealed to me. I like those Lone Wolf books. Remember those books? They were like Choose Your Own Adventure books. I was all about Lone Wolf back in the day. Lone Wolf and Grey Star, I think, was the spinoff. But overall, I don't really like fantasy. You have people who like fantasy. You have people who like alien sci-fi stuff. Then you have people who like dramas, you know, like boring books. Stuff about like the human condition. You're reading The Bee Sting. You're like, oh my god, this guy's allergic to bees. Will he shoot his family? Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert if you haven't read that book. You're like, what? Oh man. You're all ripping it up. You're like, book club's tomorrow. I'm not even going to finish this book. Some people like The Bee Sting. I'm not into dramas. True crime. I'll read true crime or even like some fictional crime. I didn't read it, but like I'll watch Gone Girl. I like the movie Gone Girl. And I'm wondering, from reading this story, if the reason why people are associated with certain things, because I grew up in a sci-fi family. My dad really, really loved sci-fi. He read a lot of sci-fi books. He watched a lot of sci-fi television. Like back in the 80s, he was watching like Doctor Who, and then at a certain point they were rerunning Space 1999, and he's like, kids, go to bed. I'm watching Space 1999. He was into all of that stuff. So I grew up around it. But so did my brothers. One of my brothers really likes sci-fi. The other one, not a fan. He's into dramas and reading books about war and stuff like that. So here's my premise. What if the media that we are most connected to today is connection to who we were in a past life? Like, was I an alien? I was growing up on a Star Cruiser. A little alien guy walking around and being like, if these calculations are correct, we should be reaching Alpha Prime within the next 10 glomp clicks. And they're like, very, very good, alien man. That's my name. My alien parents, they're like, oh, we ran out of names. Over there's Gleeplorp. Over there's... You're just alien man, right? That'd be awesome. I'm gonna have a kid and just name him human. Alien man, really good job. And like, as an alien, I have a little alien family. I watch my wife give birth to 10,000 babies as they burst out of her stomach. I was like, I love you, wife, but this is how we reproduce. She's like, 10,000 babies come out. And I'm like, I will name you all Alien Baby. They're like, what? It's like, we just call you Alien Baby. And I grew up in what we would consider a sci-fi world. With flying cars and laser guns. 10,000 babies. While someone who's really into like Harry Potter, maybe in a past life they were a wizard. Right? Maybe in a past life. Maybe they grew up on another planet, right? Or maybe it's this planet. I don't know. I didn't really think that much about it. Because I don't like fantasy. But maybe you really like fantasy because in a past life you were an elf. The lamest of all fantasy characters. And you were in a tree, and you were watching like an orc army walking underneath, and you're like, "Hi, my name's Elfman. My name is Elfman, ruler of these woods, and these orcs are invading them." And you're like shooting arrows into orcs' brains, and they're like, "Get Elfman down! Stop him!" And you're like jumping off from tree to tree. And the orcs, they brutally kill you. You miss your jump and you fall down. My elf ankle! It's all broken. The orcs beat you to death with their clubs. And then when you reincarnated as a human, you grew up and, you're reading the books that your parents give you. Because you're a little kid, right? You got to read everything. You're reading this book, you're reading that book. But at a certain point when you can start to really get into literature, you find yourself drawn to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is a great introductory book for a kid. And you think you just really like the writing, you think you like the world, but as you delve more and more into the literature of fantasy, you're reading Marion Zimmer Bradley, you're reading all of this stuff, it speaks to you on a different level. There's a comfort to it, a familiarity with it. You love it because you lived it. Now, there always is a little bit of crossover. You might like a little bit of sci-fi. Obviously, I've read a little bit. I've loved The Hobbit. Read that book a couple times as a kid. But it's not the same thing when I'm sitting there and watching an episode of Deep Space Nine. And there's just something about it. There's something about that classic Star Trek. Not classic Star Trek with Kirk, but Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, the hum of the ship. There's just something about it that speaks to me. And I would argue, you go, well, how does this, not everyone reads sci-fi, not everyone reads fantasy. In fact, most people don't read that. I would say, and it's not just books too, it includes movies and stories that you're interested in. I would say with dramas, I would say you probably were a human. You probably mostly have had human experiences. You probably were always reincarnating as a human. And it's possible at some point, like, again, statistically, way long time ago, you may have been alien. But that's such an old ancestral memory to you. You've been human. You've reincarnated as human so many times that a good drama, a good dramatic story, a story of the human experience and what it means to live and grow on planet Earth, that speaks to you because that is the majority of your experiences. And you don't like sci-fi because it's too fake. You don't like fantasy. You can appreciate, every so often a book might cross over and you read it. Like pretty much everyone's read The Hobbit as a kid. But there's just something about reading a book about a young woman finding her way through the world that really speaks to you on a deep level. The same way that Deep Space Nine speaks to me. The same way that some fantasy novel speaks to somebody else. It's just a theory. It's just a theory that I came up with when I was reading this. Because I was thinking it would make sense that a lot of people would be reincarnated as aliens at some point. But then I started thinking about it. It just kind of all came to me. Like a good conspiracy theory. It just pops in your head and you're like, well, I believe this now. And I'm going to convince other people of it. Doesn't have a lot of evidence to back it up. Technically, it has zero evidence to back it up. But I find it as an interesting thought. Because people do have, we glom on to these particular genres. Now, obviously, like comedy in a past life, you're getting hit in the head by pans. You were a living slapstick guy, so now you're like The Mask. You watch The Mask, you're like laughing hello. You're in a movie theater, you're like, that's me, Ma. I was The Mask. I was The Mask. I used to be able to get hit in the head with bowling balls. Comedy would just fit in with. It's not your foolproof plan. You're like, what about like impressionist films from France? I love those. Did I used to be black and white? I don't know. Probably not, but it's not foolproof. But there, like a sci-fi story speaks to me on a level that no other form of media even comes close to. Not even close. Is that because I just really love sci-fi and I love speculative things? Or is it because I used to live in a universe like that? I used to live in a past life in a sci-fi world. And these trappings of high technology mixed with real emotions, real people, real emotions, does it remind me of a life I used to have and mourn because I don't have it anymore? And so I watch these shows to revisit. I think I just watch them because they're cool. I think I watch them because I think there's great stories to be told. With science fiction, you go, Jason, those same stories can be told in other genres as well. Yeah, probably, but I don't want to watch them. I want to watch this. So is it because that I was just exposed to sci-fi as a kid and it glommed on me? Or is it because it reminds me of my past? Reminds me of my past? While another genre may remind you of your past. Here's the thing, I know you're thinking, you're like, okay, what about horror movies? Jason, you do watch a lot of horror movies as well. Were you going to address that? I don't know. I mean, it's 100%. I don't know if in the past I was killed because some teenagers ran me over with their car, and then the next summer I killed them off one by one. I'm not saying it's 100%. Maybe I lived a very scary alien life with lots of clowns and Freddy Kruegers and stuff like that. I don't know. It's not 100%, but I do think it's an interesting theory. The stories that we're attracted to now, are we attracted to them just because we like them and it's no more than that? Or are we drawn to certain tales because they remind us of who we used to be? DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal conspiracy and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm so glad you listened to it today. Have a great day.